Captain Zethara felt the familiar hum of the Kethmaran's engines beneath his feet as he walked down the main corridor. The exploration vessel had been his home for 7 years now, and he knew every sound it made. This particular hum meant they were running at quarter speed through open space, scanning for anything interesting the universe might throw their way. The Veltar Confederation valued careful exploration above all else. They had learned long ago that rushing through the galaxy led to trouble. Better to move slowly, document everything, and make contact with new species only when absolutely certain it would benefit both sides. "Captain," came the voice of his science officer, Nirabeth, over the ship's communication system. "We have detected something unusual ahead." Zethara quickened his pace toward the bridge. His crew rarely called anything unusual unless it truly was. The Veltar had been exploring space for over 3,000 years. They had seen most things the galaxy had to offer. When he reached the bridge, Nirabeth was standing at her station, her 6-fingered hands moving rapidly over the control surfaces. The main screen showed a view of empty space, stars scattered like dust across the darkness. "What do you have for me?" Zethara asked, settling into his command chair. "There," Nirabeth pointed at the screen. A small object appeared, highlighted by the ship's targeting system. It appears to be some kind of escape pod. Very primitive design, but the metal composition suggests it came from a technological civilization. Zethara leaned forward, studying the object. It was small, maybe large enough for 1 or 2 beings. The hull was scorched and damaged, clearly having been through some kind of disaster. "Life signs?" he asked him, faint but yes. "One being inside, barely alive from what our sensors can tell." This was exactly the kind of situation that made Zethara's job difficult. The Confederation had strict rules about contact with primitive species. They were supposed to observe from a distance, document what they found, and report back to the Council. Direct interference was forbidden unless the species had already achieved faster-than-light travel and made contact with the galactic community. But they had also sworn an oath to preserve life wherever possible. "The being in that pod was dying. Any sign of where it came from?" Zethara asked. His navigation officer, Kelthman, spoke up from his station. "Captain, I have been analyzing the pod's trajectory. If I trace it backwards, it appears to have come from a system approximately 2 light years from here. But..." He paused, his expression troubled. "But what?" "That system no longer exists, sir. Our long-range sensors show only debris and radiation. Something destroyed it completely within the last few months." A chill ran down Zethara's spine. Total system destruction was rare, but when it happened, it usually meant one thing. The Drakthul Empire had found another target. The Drakthul were a nightmare that haunted the dreams of every peaceful species in the galaxy. They appeared without warning, destroyed everything that could resist them, and enslaved or killed the rest. The Confederation had been lucky so far, staying far enough away from Drakthul territory to avoid notice. But if they were expanding this far out, "Bring the pod aboard," Zethara ordered. "Medical team to Bay 3 immediately." "Sir," his first officer, Velkara, spoke carefully. "The Confederation protocols clearly state "I know what the protocols state," Zethara cut him off. "But there is a living being dying in that pod, and we are the only ones who can help. We will deal with the Council later." The medical team was already waiting when the pod was brought aboard. Zethara watched through the bay windows as they carefully opened the damaged hull. Inside was a being unlike any he had seen before. It was roughly humanoid, with pale skin and strange fur covering its head. It wore simple clothing and primitive technology. But what struck Zethara most was how small and fragile it looked. This creature was clearly not built for the harsh realities of space travel. "Captain," came the voice of Chief Medical Officer Thranapa over the communication system, "this being is in critical condition. Severe radiation poisoning, internal injuries, and what appears to be extreme psychological trauma. I need to get it to the medical bay immediately." "Do whatever it takes," Zethara replied. Over the next several days, Zethara found himself visiting the medical bay more often than he should have. The alien owl, the being they had rescued out, was fighting for its life with a determination that impressed the entire medical staff. It should have died 3 times by now, Thranapa told him during one visit. The radiation levels it was exposed to were enough to kill any of us. But it just keeps fighting. This species must have incredible resilience. On the 4th day, the being finally woke up. Zethara was there when its eyes opened, small, round eyes unlike the large, multifaceted eyes of the Veltar. The being looked around in confusion, then tried to speak. The words meant nothing to Zethara, but the ship's universal translator was already working on the language. Within hours, they had established basic communication. The being called itself Elena, Dr. Elena Vasquez. She was something called a human, from a planet called Earth. She had been part of a research mission to a place called New Horizon Colony when the attack happened. Through broken translations and rough drawings, Elena told them about the attackers, ships that appeared without warning, weapons that turned entire cities to glass, the complete destruction of everything she had known. Drakthul, Zathara said quietly when she described the attackers. Elena looked at him sharply. The universal translator had improved enough that she could understand most of what they said now. You know them? She asked. We know of them. They are an empire that conquers other worlds. They have destroyed many civilizations. Elena's face went pale, which Zathara had learned was a human expression of fear or shock. My home, she whispered. Earth. They mentioned coordinates during the attack. They were planning to go there next. Zathara felt his heart sink. If the Drakthul had coordinates for this human's homeworld, then an entire species was about to be wiped out. And there was nothing the Confederation could do about it. They were peaceful explorers, not warriors. They had never fought a war in their entire history. How many of your people live on Earth? He asked gently. 8 billion, Elena replied. 8 billion. Zathara had to sit down. In all his years of exploration, he had never encountered a single world population that large. Most species spread across multiple planets by the time they reached such numbers. This human species was young, primitive, but incredibly numerous, and they were all going to die unless someone warned them. Elena seemed to read his thoughts. You cannot help us, can you? She asked. I am sorry, Zathara replied. We are not warriors. We are explorers and scientists. We do not have the ships or weapons to fight the Drakthul Empire. Elena nodded slowly, but he could see something hardening in her expression. It was not despair. It was determination. Then I need to find a way home, she said. I have to warn them. Zathara looked at this small, fragile being who had just learned that her entire species was doomed, and felt something he had never experienced before. It was not just compassion for a fellow being in distress. It was admiration for courage in the face of impossible odds. The Veltar prized caution and careful planning above all else. But as he watched Elena's face, Zathara began to understand that sometimes caution was not enough. Sometimes someone had to be willing to take risks, to fight against overwhelming odds, to refuse to give up even when defeat seemed certain. He made a decision that would change everything. We will help you, he said quietly. I do not know how yet, but we will find a way. Elena looked at him with those strange, small eyes, and for the first time since her rescue, she smiled. Elena had been aboard the Keth Morin for 3 months now, and she was no longer just a patient. She had become something the Veltar had never expected, a member of their crew. It started small. Elena was a scientist by training, and her curiosity about everything around her was infectious. She asked questions about their technology, their culture, their history. But more importantly, she offered her own knowledge in return. Your ship's power distribution system, Elena said one day while standing with Chief Engineer Morketh in the engine room. It is very elegant, but you are losing efficiency in the secondary relays. Morketh looked at the human with surprise. Elena was barely tall enough to reach his shoulder, and her primitive clothing made her look like a child playing dress-up among adults. But her understanding of engineering principles was sharp. How do you know this? He asked. Elena pulled out a small device she had been working on with a crude scanner she had built from salvaged parts. I have been taking readings. Your energy flows are smooth, but there are microfluctuations every 47 seconds. That suggests a resonance problem in your tertiary power grid. Morketh ran his own scans and found that Elena was correct. The fluctuations were so small that Veltar instruments had dismissed them as normal variation. But Elena's device, built with human engineering principles, had detected the pattern. How did you build this scanner? Morketh asked, studying the device. Spare parts from the repair shop, Elena replied. I asked permission first. Your technology is much more advanced than ours, but the basic principles are the same. I just had to figure out how to make it work with what I had available. This was typical of what the Veltar had learned about humans, where they would design a perfect solution and then build it exactly to specifications. Humans seemed to improvise constantly. They would take whatever was available and make it work somehow. Captain Zethara found Elena in the ship's small library one evening, reading through Veltar historical records. She had learned their written language with surprising speed. "Learning about us?" he asked. "Learning about everyone," Elena replied. "Your people have contacted over 400 different species in the last 1,000 years, but you have never fought a war with any of them." "We believe in peaceful coexistence," Zethara said, settling into one of the reading chairs. "Violence only creates more violence." Elena was quiet for a moment. "On Earth we have a saying, walk softly and carry a big stick. It means to be peaceful, but to be ready to fight if you have to." "And you think we should carry bigger sticks?" "I think you have been lucky," Elena said carefully. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. You have done well to avoid trouble for so long, but eventually trouble finds everyone." Zethara knew she was thinking about the Drakthul. The entire crew had been following the news from the Outer Rim with growing concern. 3 more systems had gone dark in the past month. The Empire was expanding, and its expansion path was slowly curving toward Confederation space. "Tell me about Earth," Zethara said, changing the subject. Elena's expression softened. "It is beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. From space, it looks like a jewel floating in the darkness." She activated a small holographic projector array, another device she had built from spare parts array, and showed him images she had stored in her personal files. Zethara saw a world unlike anything in Veltar space. It was vibrant and chaotic, with massive cities and wild wilderness existing side by side. 8 billion people, he said quietly. 8 billion individuals, Elena corrected. "We do not always agree with each other. We fight sometimes, argue constantly, and rarely do anything the easy way. But when something threatens all of us, we can work together." She showed him more images. Humans building massive structures, exploring dangerous places, solving problems with solutions that seemed impossible. They built ships to cross oceans before they truly understood how oceans worked. They flew through the air before they had perfected the science of flight. They reached for the stars before they had learned to live peacefully with their neighbors. "You take such risks," Zethara observed. "We have to," Elena said. "Our world is not as safe as yours. We have earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, ice ages. Nature on Earth is constantly trying to kill us. We learned to adapt or die." That evening, Zethara called a meeting with his senior staff. Elena had asked to attend, and he had agreed. The subject was what to do about her situation. "The Confederation Council has responded to our reports," First Officer Velkara announced. "They commend us for the rescue, but they insist that we deliver Dr. Vasquez to the nearest Confederation station for proper handling." "Proper handling?" Elena asked. "You would be given a comfortable life on one of our worlds," Zethara explained. "Protected and cared for, but unable to return to your own people." Elena's face darkened. "While the Drakthul destroy Earth, the Council believes that direct interference in pre-contact species affairs is too dangerous," Velkara continued. "Even if we wanted to help, we do not have the military capability to fight the Drakthul Empire." "What if I left on my own?" Elena asked quietly. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what she was thinking. "Elena," Zethara said gently, "even if we gave you one of our fastest ships, you could not reach Earth in time to make a difference. The Drakthul will arrive within the next 18 months. Then I need to find a different way," Elena replied. Over the following weeks, Elena threw herself into studying Veltar technology with desperate intensity. She had access to the ship's technical databases, and she absorbed information at a rate that amazed the crew. She was particularly interested in their communication systems. The Veltar had developed quantum communication arrays that could send messages across vast distances instantly. But the technology required massive installations on both ends. "What if you could miniaturize the transmitter?" Elena asked Communications Officer Rinalta one day. "Impossible," Rinalta replied. "The quantum entanglement field requires massive energy inputs and precise calibration equipment." "But what if you did not need perfect accuracy?" Elena pressed. "What if you just needed to get a basic message through?" Elena spent days working on the problem, using her human approach of making do with whatever was available. Instead of trying to build a perfect quantum transmitter, she designed a crude but functional one that could be built into a small ship. It would only work once, she explained to Zethara, and the message would be short and simple. But it might be enough to warn Earth. Elena, Zathara said carefully, even if your transmitter worked, you would still need a ship to carry it, and our ships are too valuable to risk. Elena smiled, the same expression she had worn when she first explained her improvised scanner. What about the scout ships in your maintenance bay? The ones you were planning to scrap for parts? Zathara realized that Elena had been planning this for weeks. She had studied their ship inventories, their maintenance schedules, even their crew rotations. She knew exactly which ship she wanted and when it would be available. You would be stealing Confederation property, he said. Yes, Elena replied, but you could report it as a theft after I was already gone. No one could blame you for what a desperate alien did without your knowledge. That night, Zathara stood in his private quarters, staring out at the stars through his viewport. In 18 months, 8 billion humans would face the same fate that had befallen New Horizon Colony. The Confederation would do nothing because it was not their policy to interfere. But sometimes, Zathara thought, policy was not enough. Sometimes someone had to be willing to take risks. He activated his personal communicator and sent a message to Elena. Bay 7, tomorrow at 300 hours. The security systems will experience a brief malfunction. The next morning, Scout Ship 47 was reported stolen by an unknown intruder. Captain Zathara filed the appropriate reports and expressed his regrets to the Confederation Council. Did not mention that he had spent half the night helping Elena install her improvised quantum transmitter, or that he had given her detailed star charts showing the fastest route to human space. Some thefts, he decided, were worth the consequences. Elena had been flying alone for 6 weeks when she detected the first Drakthul patrol. The stolen scout ship was small and fast, but it was not designed for long-range solo travel. Elena had been living on emergency rations and recycled water, sleeping in 2-hour shifts while the ship's autopilot handled navigation. Every day took her closer to human space, but every day also brought new dangers. The Drakthul patrol consisted of 3 heavy cruisers moving in a standard search pattern. Elena watched them on her sensors, noting their formation and scanning protocols. They were looking for something, probably survivors from their recent attacks. Elena powered down all non-essential systems and drifted on momentum, hoping to avoid detection. The scout ship's stealth capabilities were limited, but they might be enough if she stayed quiet and small. For 3 hours, she barely breathed as the Drakthul ships swept through the area. Her sensors showed energy spikes as they scanned debris fields and investigated anything that might be hiding. These were not random patrols. They were hunting. When the patrol finally moved on, Elena restarted her engines and changed course. She had been planning to take the most direct route to Earth, but clearly the Drakthul were watching the obvious paths. She would have to be more careful. The detour cost her time, but it also taught her valuable lessons about Drakthul operations. They were methodical and thorough, but they followed predictable patterns. More importantly, they were confident, maybe overconfident. They expected any survivors to be helpless refugees, not someone actively working against them. Elena began using her improvised quantum transmitter to send brief coded messages toward human space. She kept them short and simple, knowing that her jury-rigged equipment could fail at any moment. But each message contained crucial information: coordinates of Drakthul fleet movements, attack patterns, and most importantly, a warning about what was coming. She had no way of knowing if anyone was receiving her transmissions. 2 months into her journey, Elena reached the first human outpost. Frontier Station Delta was a small mining operation on the edge of human space, home to barely 3,000 people. As she approached, her communication system crackled with surprised voices. "Unknown vessel, this is Frontier Station Delta. Identify yourself immediately." "This is Dr. Elena Vasquez," she replied. "I am human, and I have an urgent message for Earth." The confusion in the response was clear. "Dr. Vasquez, our records show you died at New Horizon Colony 6 months ago. New Horizon was destroyed by an alien empire called the Drakthul. I was rescued by another species, but I escaped to warn you. They are coming for Earth." Elena's ship was brought into the station's small docking bay, where she was met by Station Commander Sarah Chen. Chen was a practical woman who had spent 15 years managing mining operations on the frontier. She listened to Elena's story with growing alarm. "You are telling me that an alien armada is planning to attack Earth?" Chen asked. "Not just attack," Elena replied. Destroy, completely. They do not take prisoners or negotiate terms. They eliminate everything that might resist them. Elena showed Chen the data she had collected during her escaper were sensor readings of Drakthul ships, recordings of their attack patterns, and, most importantly, the star charts showing their expansion route. According to my calculations, they will reach the Sol system in approximately 14 months, Elena said. Maybe less if they accelerate their schedule. Chen stared at the data for a long time. Dr. Vasquez, I want to believe you, but this is beyond anything we have ever faced. We are miners and traders, not soldiers. Then we need to warn the people who are soldiers, Elena replied. Chen helped Elena send detailed reports to Earth Command, but Elena knew that bureaucracy would slow everything down. She could not wait for committees to debate and politicians to argue. She had to keep moving. Over the next several months, Elena traveled from station to station, colony to colony, spreading her warning to anyone who would listen. Some dismissed her as a traumatized survivor seeing threats that did not exist. Others listened but felt helpless to act, but a few understood the magnitude of what was coming. Colonel Marcus Webb commanded the remote military base at Titan Station. He was a career soldier who had seen action in the last conflicts with space pirates and resource wars. When Elena arrived at his base, he listened to her entire story without interruption. "Show me everything," he said when she finished. Elena shared all her data the Drakthul ship specifications, their attack patterns, their apparent technology levels. Webb studied it with the eye of a professional soldier. "This is not random destruction," he observed. "They are following a specific strategy. They target infrastructure first, then population centers, then any remaining resistance. Very efficient. Can we stop them?" Elena asked. Webb was quiet for a long time. "Not with what we have now. Our ships are designed for patrol duty and anti-piracy operations. The Drakthul vessels you describe are purpose-built warships. We would need a completely different kind of fleet. What about Earth's defenses? Earth has the largest fleet in human space, but it is spread across dozens of systems. And even if we could concentrate everything in Sol, we would still be outnumbered and outgunned." Elena felt despair creeping in. She had traveled thousands of light years to bring this warning. But it seemed like it would not matter. "However," Webb continued, "humans have one advantage that your alien friends might not have considered." "What is that?" "We learn fast when our survival depends on it. Give us 14 months and the knowledge you have brought us, and we might surprise these Drakthul." Webb immediately began sending encrypted messages to his contacts throughout the military. Elena's data was analyzed, copied, and distributed to research teams across human space. Within weeks, crash programs were beginning to develop new technologies and strategies. Elena's most important stop was her final one, where's Earth itself. The blue and green world looked exactly as she remembered, floating peacefully in the darkness of space. But as her small ship approached, Elena could see that things were already changing. New construction was visible around the orbital stations, and military traffic was much heavier than normal. Her message had been received. Admiral Jennifer Park met Elena at Luna Station, the military command center orbiting Earth's moon. Park was one of the youngest admirals in human history, promoted rapidly during the recent expansion into deep space. "Dr. Vasquez," Park said as they shook hands, "you have caused quite a stir in the last few months." "Good," Elena replied. "A stir is better than extinction." Park led Elena to a secure briefing room where holographic displays showed the current state of human space. Elena could see military units being repositioned, supply lines being established, and construction projects beginning across dozens of systems. "Your warnings have been taken seriously," Park said. "We are mobilizing everything we have. Will it be enough? Honestly, probably not. The Drakthul have overwhelming advantages in technology and numbers, but we are not planning to fight them the way they expect." Park activated a detailed tactical display. "We have been studying the data you brought us. The Drakthul fight like an empire. They expect their enemies to mass their forces and meet them in traditional fleet battles. But humans do not fight like an empire." Elena studied the display, seeing plans that looked nothing like traditional space warfare. Instead of massing their fleets, humans were distributing them into small mobile units. Instead of defending fixed positions, they were planning constant movement and hit-and-run attacks. "Guerrilla warfare," Elena said. "Exactly. We cannot match their firepower, but we can make them pay for every system they take." And while they are dealing with our main forces, we are preparing something else. Park activated another display, showing massive construction projects throughout the solar system. New shipyards, weapons factories, and training facilities were being built at a rate Elena had never seen before. We are not just preparing to fight the Drakthul, Park explained. We are preparing to win. Elena felt something she had not experienced since her rescue hope. The 8 billion people of Earth were not going to face extinction passively. They were going to fight. What do you need from me? Elena asked. Everything you learned during your time with the Veltar. Their technology, their capabilities, their limitations. If we are going to survive this war, we need every advantage we can get. Elena smiled. Then let us get started. As Earth prepared for war, Elena worked with teams of engineers and scientists, sharing everything she had learned about galactic technology and alien cultures. The knowledge she had gained during her time aboard the Kethmoran would help save her species. But more than that, it would help humanity step onto the galactic stage as something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that refused to surrender, no matter what the odds. Earth had become a fortress. 14 months after Elena's return, the entire solar system buzzed with activity that would have been impossible to imagine before the Drakthul threat. Every moon, asteroid, and space station had been converted into either a military base or an industrial center. The transformation was staggering in its scope and speed. Elena stood on the observation deck of Ceres Station, watching massive freight haulers deliver raw materials to the newly constructed shipyards. The asteroid had been completely hollowed out and converted into the largest shipbuilding facility in human history. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the skeletal frames of warships taking shape. These were not the sleek exploration vessels that humanity had built before. These new ships were brutal and functional, designed for one purpose: to fight and keep fighting even when everything went wrong. They looked like weapons that had been shaped into ships rather than ships that had been armed for war. "The Terran Rangers want to see you," said Colonel Webb, joining Elena at the window. He had been promoted and reassigned to oversee the new Special Forces units. Elena nodded and followed Webb through the station's corridors. The walls were lined with recruitment posters showing determined humans in military gear. "Defend Earth" was the most common slogan, but Elena's favorite was "They picked the wrong species." The Terran Rangers training facility occupied an entire section of Ceres Station. Elena had helped design their training programs based on what she had learned about Drakthul ship layouts and combat tactics. The Rangers were being trained for boarding operations, a type of warfare that most galactic species had abandoned centuries ago. Most aliens think hand-to-hand combat is primitive. Elena had explained to the training officers. The Drakthul use automated systems and expect their enemies to fight at long range. They will not be prepared for humans who board their ships and fight them directly. The training facility looked like controlled chaos. Rangers practiced fighting in zero gravity, learned to operate in hostile environments, and studied alien technology captured from Drakthul, scout ships that had been intercepted during the preparation period. Elena watched a squad of Rangers practice, breaching techniques on a mock-up of a Drakthul corridor. They moved with precision and aggression that would have shocked the peaceful Veltar. These humans had been shaped by their world's harsh environment and their species' long history of warfare. They were ready to take that violence to the stars. Dr. Vasquez called Sergeant Lisa Torres the lead instructor. "We have been working on the problem you mentioned, Drakthul personal shields." Elena joined Torres at a testing station where a captured Drakthul energy shield generator hummed quietly. The device could stop most energy weapons and deflect projectiles. In previous encounters, it had made Drakthul soldiers nearly invulnerable. "Watch this," Torres said, activating the shield. The familiar blue glow surrounded the generator. Then she picked up what looked like an ordinary combat knife and threw it at the shield. The knife passed through the energy field as if it was not there and struck the target behind it. "How?" Elena asked. "The shield is designed to stop fast-moving objects and energy discharges," Torres explained. "But it cannot distinguish between a bullet and a blade moving at normal speeds. We tested it with swords, knives, even sharpened sticks. As long as the projectile is not moving faster than about 50 meters per second, the shield ignores it." Elena shook her head in amazement. Once again, human ingenuity had found a solution that more advanced species had missed. The Drakthul had probably never considered low-velocity weapons because no civilized species use them anymore. We have also been developing these, Torres continued, showing Elena a crossbow-like weapon. It fires metal bolts at precisely the right speed to penetrate their shields. Silent, accurate, and completely unexpected. Elena spent the next several hours touring other facilities throughout the solar system. On Luna, massive railgun installations were being carved into the moon's surface. On Mars, underground factories produced ammunition and spare parts at a rate that would have bankrupted any pre-war economy. On Jupiter's moons, fuel refineries worked around the clock to supply the growing fleet. But the most impressive sight was Earth itself. The planet's orbital space was crowded with defensive platforms, communication arrays, and supply depots. During her previous visit, Elena had counted maybe a dozen major installations around Earth. Now there were hundreds. Admiral Park met Elena at Earth Station Alpha, the massive command center that coordinated humanity's war preparations. "How are we doing?" Elena asked. "Better than I hoped, not as well as I would like," Park replied. "We have tripled our fleet size and quadrupled our industrial capacity. Our new ships are faster and more heavily armed than anything we have built before. The Rangers are ready for boarding operations, and we have a few surprises that even you have not seen yet." Park led Elena to a restricted section of the station where a new type of ship was docked. It was smaller than a typical warship but heavily armored and equipped with unusual external modules. "What is it?" Elena asked. "We call them Persistence-class ships," Park explained. "They are designed around human strength, adaptability, resourcefulness, and the ability to keep fighting when everything goes wrong." Elena studied the ship's specifications. Instead of massive engines and heavy weapons, it carried repair facilities, manufacturing equipment, and modular components that could be reconfigured during combat. "The idea is that these ships can operate independently for months or even years," Park continued. "They can repair themselves, build their own ammunition, and modify their systems as needed. While the Drakthul are fighting our main fleet, these ships will be behind their lines hitting supply convoys and bases. Guerrilla warfare in space," Elena said. "Exactly. The Drakthul fight like an empire. They depend on supply lines, logistics, and overwhelming force. We are going to fight like humans. We are going to be everywhere, adapt to everything, and never give up." Park showed Elena more innovations that human engineers had developed. Mines that could disguise themselves as debris. Communication networks that could operate even if most of the nodes were destroyed. Weapons that could be built from common materials found throughout the galaxy. "We have also been working on your other suggestion," Park said, leading Elena to another restricted area. Inside was a communication array unlike anything Elena had seen. It was based on the quantum transmitter design she had developed during her escape, but improved and expanded with human engineering principles. "We have been sending messages to the Veltar Confederation," Park explained, "very carefully, using the contact protocols you provided. We are not asking them to fight with USARAO. We know they cannot do that. But we are sharing intelligence about Drakthul movements and asking them to pass warnings to other species." Elena felt a surge of pride. Even facing extinction, humanity was thinking about protecting others. "Have they responded?" "Yes, Captain Zathara sends his regards, by the way. The Confederation is quietly evacuating their outer colonies and preparing defensive positions. They cannot help us directly, but they are grateful for the warnings." "And the other species?" "Some are listening. Others think we are just a primitive species crying for help. But word is spreading throughout the galaxy that humanity is preparing to fight the Drakthul Empire." Elena spent her final day on Earth visiting the planet's surface. The changes were visible even there. Military bases that had been mothballed for decades were active again. Factories that had once produced consumer goods now manufactured weapons and military equipment. Cities that had grown soft and comfortable during the long peace now showed the focused energy of a world at war. But what impressed Elena most was the spirit of the people. Humans had always been at their best when facing impossible challenges. The threat of extinction had not broken them, or it had awakened something that had been sleeping, since their ancestors had fought to survive on a dangerous world. Children played games, where they pretended to be rangers boarding alien ships. Artists created propaganda posters showing humans standing defiantly against alien invaders. Musicians wrote songs about protecting Earth and never surrendering. 8 billion people had become a single weapon pointed at the darkness between the stars. Are we ready? Elena asked Admiral Park during their final meeting. We are as ready as we can be, Park replied. The Drakthul will find us very different from their previous enemies. Elena looked out at the bustling activity around Earth Station Alpha. Humanity had spent 14 months transforming from a peaceful exploration society into a war machine. They had done the impossible in an impossibly short time, but the real test was coming. In less than a month, long-range sensors would detect the Drakthul invasion fleet entering the outer edge of the solar system, and then the galaxy would learn what happened when someone threatened humanity's home. The Drakthul invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, exactly when Elena's calculations had predicted. 127 massive warships, supported by twice as many smaller vessels, began their approach toward Earth. Admiral Elena Vasqueza. She had been promoted when she accepted command of the 3rd Human Defense Fleet. Xiao watched the enemy formation from the bridge of her flagship, the HMS Determination. The ship was one of the new Persistence-class vessels, built around the principle that humans fought best when everything seemed hopeless. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, Commander Sarah Kim. Enemy fleet is maintaining standard approach formation. They expect us to meet them at the outer planets. Are they scanning for our forces? Elena asked. Yes, ma'am. But they are only detecting about 30% of our actual strength. The stealth modifications are working. Elena smiled grimly. Human engineers had spent months studying Drakthul sensor technology, learning to hide ships in places the aliens would not think to look, hidden among asteroids, powered down and drifting, disguised as debris. The human fleet was everywhere the enemy was not looking. Signal from Admiral Park, reported the communications officer. Operation Hornet's Nest is authorized to begin. Elena activated the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, this is Admiral Vasquez. For 18 months we have prepared for this moment. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens our home. Remember, we are not here to die gloriously. We are here to win. Execute Hornet's Nest. Throughout the solar system, human ships began moving. The Drakthul expected the main battle to occur near Jupiter, where their sensors had detected the largest concentration of human forces. What they found instead was a coordinated swarm of smaller vessels that attacked from every direction at once. The human strategy was not to match the Drakthul ship for ship, but to make them pay for every meter of space they advanced. Hit-and-run attacks, surprise ambushes, and constant harassment turned what should have been a glorious conquest into a grinding, bloody advance. Elena's 3rd Fleet specialized in deep penetration attacks. While the main human forces engaged the Drakthul vanguard, her ships slipped through the enemy formation and struck at their command vessels and supply ships. Target the logistics ships first, Elena ordered as her fleet emerged from hiding behind Europa. They cannot fight without ammunition and fuel. The HMS Determination led a formation of 8 ships in a high-speed attack run on a Drakthul supply convoy. The enemy escorts tried to intercept, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable than anything the Drakthul had fought before. Ranger teams. Prepare for boarding operations, Elena commanded. This was the moment Elena had been preparing for since her return to Earth. The Terran Rangers had trained extensively for fighting inside alien ships, and the Drakthul were about to learn why no galactic species had attempted boarding operations in centuries. The Determination's boarding pods shot across space like arrows, too small and fast for the Drakthul point defense systems to track effectively. They punched through enemy hulls and disgorged teams of Rangers who moved through the ships like a plague. Elena watched the tactical displays as Ranger teams systematically disabled Drakthul vessels from the inside. The aliens' automated defense systems were designed to repel energy weapons and missiles, not humans with crossbows and combat knives who could walk through their shields like they were not there. Admiral, reported Commander Kim, we are receiving a priority transmission from the Kethmaran. Elena's heart skipped. Captain Zethara? Yes, ma'am. They are requesting permission to enter the battle zone. Elena stared at the display. The Veltar Confederation was not supposed to have any ships in this area. They had withdrawn all their vessels to avoid being caught in the fighting. Put him through, Elena ordered. The familiar image of Captain Zethara appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Elena could see the bridge of the Kethmaran, but it looked different. The ship had been modified with additional armor and weapons that looked decidedly non-Veltar in design. "Captain," Elena said, "you should not be here. This is not your fight." "Admiral," Sethara replied with the expression that might have been a smile, "you are wrong. This became our fight the moment we chose to rescue a human in distress. The Confederation Council may believe in neutrality, but my crew and I believe in paying our debts." Elena realized that Sethara was not alone. Her sensors detected dozens of other ships approaching Veltar vessels that had been modified for combat, along with ships from other species she recognized from her time studying galactic civilizations. "We cannot offer you much military assistance," Sethara continued, "but we can provide something else. Medical support, technical expertise, and proof that humanity does not stand alone in this galaxy." Elena felt tears in her eyes. "Captain, the Drakthul will destroy you if they detect you." "Then we will simply have to avoid being detected," Sethara replied. "I believe you humans have taught us something about being, what is the phrase, sneaky." The battle raged for 3 days. The Drakthul advance slowed to a crawl as human forces harassed them at every step. Their massive warships, designed to crush resistance through overwhelming firepower, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to stand still long enough to be crushed. Elena's fleet had been particularly effective, destroying or crippling over 30 enemy vessels while suffering only moderate losses. The Rangers had proven that boarding operations were not only possible but devastatingly effective against an enemy that had forgotten how to fight at close quarters. But the real turning point came when the Drakthul fleet reached Mars. The planet's surface erupted with railgun fire from concealed installations, massive magnetic accelerators, built into the planet's crust and powered by geothermal energy, hurled projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The Drakthul shields, designed to stop energy weapons, were useless against solid metal moving at relativistic velocities. "Mars, defense grid is firing," reported Commander Kim. "Direct hits on multiple enemy capital ships." Elena watched as Drakthul vessels that had seemed invincible were torn apart by weapons that were essentially scaled-up versions of ancient artillery. Once again, human engineering had found a solution that more advanced species had overlooked. But the Drakthul were not beaten yet. Their remaining ships pushed past Mars and headed for Earth itself. The final battle would be fought in humanity's home system. Elena's fleet intercepted the enemy vanguard near Luna. The moon's hidden weapon installations joined the battle, but the Drakthul had learned from their experience at Mars. They concentrated their fire on the defensive platforms, systematically destroying each installation. "Admiral," called Commander Kim, "we are receiving a distress signal from the Kethmaran. They are under attack." Elena's blood turned cold. On the tactical display, she could see the Veltar ship surrounded by 3 Drakthul cruisers. The Kethmaran's modifications allowed it to fight, but it was hopelessly outgunned. "All ships, new priority target," Elena ordered. "We are going to rescue some old friends." The HMS Determination and her escorts changed course, racing toward the embattled Veltar vessel. Elena knew it was exactly the kind of tactical mistake that could cost them the battle, diverting forces to save a single ship when the fate of Earth hung in the balance. But some things were more important than tactics. The human ships hit the Drakthul formation like a hammer. Elena's Rangers boarded 2 of the enemy cruisers while her other ships engaged the 3rd. The fighting was brutal and close, with human crews compensating for inferior firepower through superior training and sheer determination. "Elena," came Sethara's voice over the communication system, "my ship is badly damaged. We cannot escape." "Then we will come to you," Elena replied. The Determination's boarding pods shot across space toward the Kethmaran. Elena personally led the rescue team, something Admiral Park would have court-martialed her for if she had asked permission first. Elena found Captain Sethara on his damaged bridge, injured but alive. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep their ship functional. "Captain," Elena said, helping him to his feet, "we need to evacuate your crew." "No," Sethara replied firmly. "This is our ship and we will not abandon it. But perhaps you could help us repair it." Elena looked around the bridge and made a decision that would have amazed her 18 months earlier. "Commander Kim, transfer engineering teams to the Kethmaran. We are going to fix this ship and get back into the fight for the next 2 hours." Human and Veltar crews worked side by side, repairing damage and jury-rigging systems that had been destroyed by Drakthul weapons. Elena found herself using the same improvised engineering techniques she had learned during her original rescue. But now she was teaching them to aliens who had once thought humans were primitive. "Your species is remarkable," Zathara told Elena as they watched a human engineer repair a Veltar quantum processor, using spare parts and determination. "You refuse to give up even when logic says you should." "We learned a long time ago that logic is not always enough," Elena replied. "Sometimes you have to keep fighting just because it is the right thing to do." The battle for Earth continued for another day, but the outcome was no longer in doubt.